Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome, everyone. This is Frederique Lavios, Chair, and I want to welcome everyone to the monthly Palisades Neighborhood Association Neighborhood and Board meeting. We have a full schedule, and I have a couple of housekeeping things to do before we get started, just really quick. And that is when the meeting etiquette. So we've got, with the exception of our speakers tonight and some of the committee coordinators, we have a 2-minute limit per person so that all can be heard. Please keep your comments respectful and relevant. And while we respect and encourage differences of opinion, we reserve the right to cease unproductive commentary. Please use the Zoom chat or raise your hand. You can also raise your hand using the icon if you have a comment or a question. So first up on the agenda is roll call. Nancy Sage, go ahead, please.
Okay. So looking at my notes, I have Frederique and Chris and Roger Gray, Rob Heap. Annie Miller's not here, just confirming. John Thies, is he here today? I think so.
Yes.
Do we have Meg Wilkinson? No?
Yes.
Oh, she is here.
She's having trouble with her mic.
Okay. Charles Buck is absent?
Nope, he's here.
He's here. Okay, so a lot of people jumped in. Joe Avila.
We have to use the audio people because she can't scroll.
Okay. Jenny Cherry Tree. Is Carrie Love here tonight? No?
I don't think so, but she is, Annie Miller is not a board member anymore, just so you know.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
And you forgot Joe Avila.
Joe Avila, yes.
She got me.
I got it.
Oh, pardon.
Is there
And
anyone else that if you didn't hear me say your name, can you speak up if you're a board member? Okay. So next would be approval of the meeting minutes from the last meeting.
So Roger, I move to approve.
Thank you, Roger. Do I have someone to second that?
I second it, Jenny Cherry Tree.
Jenny, thank you. Okay. And any objections to the contents of last meeting minutes? It doesn't sound like it.
No
Okay.
objection.
All right. Sounds like we can move forward. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Let me introduce Clackamas County Transportation Engineering staff, John Hangartner, Project Manager, and Joel Howie, Capital Projects Manager, and Cameron Ruin. Do you want to go ahead and share your screen?
I will. Good evening. As I share my screen, thank you for including us on your agenda. And let me
just say that the presentation is about the proposed Stafford Road roundabout at Childs Road and Stevens Meadow.
Thank you for joining us. You have 15 minutes with 5 minutes Q&A or 10 if you need more. So I will just wave when you're coming down to 5 minutes and then go like this when you're rolling. All right, when its time is up.
Just that sounds great. So I'm presenting a project called Stafford Road Improvements between Petullo Way to Rosemont Road. I'll give you a quick overview, talk about traffic conditions, and then alternatives considered. And then I'll hand it over to John, and he'll talk about the preferred alternatives, some community outreach, and then hopefully by then we can go through some of the questions. So on a project overview, this project came up through our transportation plan update in 2013 through public input. And in 2018, Stafford Road, we did a road safety audit through the whole length of Stafford Road. And a road safety audit looks at roadway deficiencies such as poor geometry, lack of shoulders, crashes, striping, and they make recommendations. And through those recommendations, this project came about. And so the project will widen Stafford Road between Petula Way and Rosemont Road, improve safety and capacity at Johnson Road and Childs Road intersections, and enhance, as a byproduct, enhance natural habitat around Pecan Creek. Let's see. So when we design our projects, we intend to minimize environmental and property impacts to the maximum extent feasible, while maintaining our roadway design standards. As you can see by the picture, there's very many constraints. We've got the Stevens Meadow Natural Area here, which is owned by the LO Parks. And then, of course, the actual city boundaries for Lake Oswego is up here. But we've got Pecan Creek that kind of meanders through here and kind of diverges into locations there. So the metro property south of Childs, it's a forested and biologically diverse. Pecan Creek in this location is permanent flowing creek. We have a culvert here that conveys Pecan Creek, and that is a barrier to fish passage. And the project will also include stormwater detention and stormwater quality facilities. Just a quick look at, the existing conditions. There's really no shoulders at all on Stafford Road. So we would add bicycle lanes, 6-foot wide bicycle lanes. And this would connect between the bicycle lanes that were constructed with the Tualatin River Bridge, and then go all the way to Rosemont Road. We would place guardrail on the west side because of the steep slopes on that side. And we'd also improve kind of the roadway geometry so it's kind of a smoother and safer ride. Just looking at Johnson Road real quickly, we would realign Johnson Road, which would reduce the steep slopes and eliminate the intersection skew and increase sight distance. We'd add a southbound left turn lane on Stafford to Johnson, which would reduce congestion on Stafford, and this would expect to reduce rear end crashes. Johnson Road would be turned into a right in, right out. And if you're trying to take a left, you would go up to the roundabout and kind of do go around the roundabout and come back the other direction. And this would reduce queuing on Johnson and eliminate any significant left turn conflicts and crashes that continuously occur there. So looking at the traffic study that was done as part of the project, there's in 2018, there was 13,774 vehicles per day, and then 14,994 actually in 2022, just coming out of the pandemic. On Childs, there was roughly 4,600 vehicles in 2018, and that dropped in half in 2022. And on Johnson Road, roughly 2,500 vehicles per day in 2018, dropped to about 1,500 vehicles in 2022. So looking at kind of a no build scenario, if we didn't do anything, it's projected that there will be 20,000 vehicles per day expected. We look at a 20-year design horizon for all our projects. So we looked at 2040 at the time. Currently, there are 4-minute wait times on Childs Road during the PM peak hours. That is expected to increase if we don't do anything to over 20 minutes in 2040. Because essentially with 20,000 vehicles per day, there's no way you can, try to take a left or do any movements from Childs Road in that 2040 horizon. From a safety standpoint and crash standpoint, in the 2018 to 2022 study period, there were 35 crashes. 22 of those were injury crashes or resulted in injuries. And this accounts for both pretty much the whole project study area. And in 2040, assuming a no build scenario, there would be a 20% increase in crashes. So looking at alternatives that were considered in the project, we first looked at a traffic signal, and the traffic signal would improve traffic operations greatly. But counter to that, there would actually be an increase in crashes. This would be compared to a no build, and this is, a result of rear end crashes that happens at traffic signals. The design, so for a traffic signal, the intersection would need to intersect at a 90-degree angle. And ideally, you have about 100-foot tangent coming out of there. At least minimum 50, 100-foot tangent is ideal. This looked at a 75-foot tangent. And so this significantly impacts the metro property here on the south, and with the tangent also would impact the Lake Oswego property. So then looking at roundabout alternatives in the traffic study looked at a roundabout with right turn lanes and a roundabout with multi turn lanes. So the roundabout with right turn lanes is similar to kind of Stafford at Borland. The traffic study did not look at just a single lane roundabout because it's already at capacity. And this is kind of what's happening already at Rosemont. And driving home yesterday, it was backed up from at that roundabout. So a roundabout, and we looked at both the north and south roundabout locations at the intersection. So a roundabout would expect to decrease total crashes by about 80%. It does reduce conflict and reduces the speed of crashes. It would reduce the injuries of crashes as well, because these are side swipes and not T-bone types of crashes. The roundabout intersection can be skewed to reduce entry speeds, and it does provide turnaround from Johnson Road. Let's see. So I'll hand this over to John to talk about evaluation of alternatives.
Thank you, Joel. Yeah, so as Joel was describing, based on congestion, existing and projected congestion, and safety considerations, all the crashes that are happening and more expected even in the future, the two main alternatives are a traffic signal or a roundabout. And the traffic signal actually would be worse performing from a safety standpoint than what's there today, whereas a roundabout would be a huge safety improvement. And we like to reduce congestion, but our first goal is always safety. So just keeping that in mind, I kind of wanted to go through how we evaluated those three alternatives that Joel was highlighting. So kind of reiterating what Joel was talking about at the beginning, this picture's kind of zoomed in at the Childs Road intersection. And you can see to the north, there's the Stevens Meadow natural area. To the south, there's a Metro natural area. And then where the Pecan Creek kind of splits, there is a habitat conservation area that actually runs all along Pecan Creek, and it has runs parallel to Pecan Creek, directly adjacent to it. So we had to think about the very constrained intersection, like we're describing there, and work on balancing impacts to properties. We also looked at setting our roadside slopes to the maximum allowable, meaning that we will tie back into existing grades as soon as possible, which also helps to minimize impacts. We also looked at utilizing retaining walls where practical. And as Joel mentioned, we designed this project with 6-foot wide bike lanes, which is the minimum allowable. Even though our standard prefers 8-foot wide bike lanes, we decided that 6 foot would be acceptable and it would help to minimize impacts as much as possible. We looked at utilizing the existing roadway alignment for proposed roundabout locations. And the reason for that is it minimizes our footprint. We don't have to build a bunch of new roadway and new asphalt, trying to minimize that. And then also an important part of this project is we needed to meet state and federal permitting requirements, particularly related to impacts to Pecan Creek. And then also, as I mentioned, we were looking to minimize impacts to the habitat conservation area, which is directly adjacent to Pecan Creek.
You're at 3 minutes.
So all that being said, the preferred alternative is what we call the roundabout south option, which utilizes the existing roadway and minimizes impacts to adjacent properties to the extent possible. And it also minimizes impacts to the Pecan Creek area specifically, which is the highest natural resource value properties. And then this option also importantly has the lowest life cycle cost. And the life cycle cost is calculated through construction costs, right-of-way costs, future operations and maintenance costs, and also safety costs in the future. And then I kind of already touched on this, but we're doing some significant natural habitat improvements with part of this, namely replacing the existing Pecan Creek culvert. And as you can see from these pictures, it's both undersized and it's not fish passable. I also want to note that any impacted habitat conservation areas, we're proposing to restore those areas to the extent possible. And our replanting plan includes hundreds of native trees and thousands of native shrubs and native grasses. And then here's just kind of a list of some community outreach we've done to date. We have a project webpage, which there's a link right here. We've given several updates at Stafford Hamlet meetings. We've sent out some social media updates. We have an interested emails party list. If you want to get on that, feel free to contact me, or Cameron may be able to share something in the chat about that list. We've also done some direct mailers to adjacent residents that are directly impacted by the project. And we've hosted a couple of open houses. So with that, I'll turn it back to Joel.
Thanks, John. I think we're probably about out of time, ready for questions. I guess we could probably just take some questions at this point.
Go ahead, Robert. And Frederick will go over because we're at total of 15 minutes right now.
Great, thank you. Oh, so yeah, thank you for sharing. This is definitely a very dangerous area. So I really appreciate the efforts of the county to try to improve safety. One question was, on the bike lanes, did you say they were going from the Rosemont roundabout down to the Tualatin River Bridge? Or are they going from Childs down?
They'll actually go all the way down to Petula Way, which is where the existing bike lanes from the Tualatin River Bridge kind of end.
But where
So
do they
they'll be
start on
full-
the north side? Yeah, on the north side. Do they go north of Childs, or do they?
Yeah, they go all the way to Rosemont.
Oh,
roundabout.
okay.
Yeah, so
Good.
there'll be a full connectivity of bike facilities all the way through there.
And then what about the safety going through the traffic circle and for bikers? That would be a concern. I'm not sure how well that works.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think people have gotten more comfortable with them over the years. I know, 10 years ago, they were kind of a new concept. So we do have a 10-foot wide shared use path. And I don't know if Joel wants to pull that back up, but essentially bicyclists can choose to either enter the roundabout as a vehicle would and go around the circle, or there's a ramp up to that 10-foot wide shared use path, which is like a really wide sidewalk, and they can go on to that shared use path and then kind of navigate it as a pedestrian would. And then once they're outside of the roundabout, they can exit. So you can see kind of there's a green strip and then another gray. Well, that gray is that 10-foot wide shared use path.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
that would
great.
be kind of for the recreational bike user that's maybe not a daily commuter.
Roger, you're next.
Thank you, Joel and John. Thank you for the presentation. I agree with what that this is a very dangerous area, and I'm glad to see that the county is working on this. I'm raising this as I'm being devil's advocate on behalf of a post I saw on Nextdoor with someone who is very supportive of LO Parks. I think they were integrally fought the Cooks Butte Tower, communication tower. They have asserted a variety of things, saying this threatens parks and such. I can't do justice to what their arguments are, but have you heard those arguments, and do you have any response to those arguments? And I'm being devil's advocate. I'm not advocating for myself. I support this project, but I'm trying to make sure that voice is heard and addressed as well. Thanks.
Sure. John, you want me to take that?
Sure.
I can actually share a picture. So it's a delicate balance of what we're trying to do. We do believe we have the optimum design to meet the standards and meet the needs of the county and the community, but we would need roughly 4,500 square feet of right of way from that park property, and 4,500 as a slope easement. And there
Joel,
would
Can you
be,
show us that in a shaded area? Because when I was looking at it, it didn't even look like you were going into the park. Or if
Oops.
there's a way to describe that to help us see it. Thank you.
yeah, let's see. So this is kind of a blown up picture of the area that we need. So the yellow is the existing right of way, and then kind of shows you where the roundabout is. The pink is a permanent easement, and then this would be the slope easement. The X's are 5 trees that would need to be removed as part of the project. So we have these kind of the shared use path here. So it's roughly goes out 50 feet beyond the roundabout. And so we want to make sure they've got some room, as bicyclists, if they choose to use this multi-use path, they've got their own area so they can kind of merge and go in.
Can you
So that's
explain
kind of the
the
main reason
proposed
there.
slope easement part? And then also, I think, Chris, do you want to jump in and ask a question? I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks. I'm also support this overall project. I think this is a great project. It's desperately needed. And frankly, among all of the controversy over this Stevens Meadows property, I haven't heard anyone opposed to the project. So we're all rooting for you guys. The real crux of the issue, I think, is how can this project be designed so it doesn't require the use of Stevens Meadows land? And so I'm curious what options, either moving the whole thing south or moving it southwest or southeast rather, or eliminating the slip lane from southbound Stafford to Childs. What options are there to avoid having to basically violate the charter amendment that the citizens voted on here in town?
So there are some options, of course. So, but they're not great. So moving the roundabout to the east would significantly impact properties on the east and have some serious property impacts. So that's really not a consideration. Moving the roundabout to the south, so the metro has a similar requirement, not as harsh as Chapter X, but you have to show that there are no alternatives available to go to impact their property. So other alternatives to consider, putting up a retaining wall. It's just very challenging to kind of put up a retaining wall along there and put guardrail. I mean, the retaining wall could still impact tree roots, things like that. It would be kind of least on the list. So it is an overall delicate balance. I mean, there's been lots of things thrown out, including, you know, going to the LO voters and asking if they would support just amending Chapter X to allow this, you know, 9,000 square feet of right-of-way that we would need. But we continue to discuss with the city staff, and we discuss internally. Again, if you do a wall with guardrail, that adds another $500,000 million to the project. And so the project then, you know, it's already construction's estimated something like 14 million. So it really becomes a challenge when we're trying to balance all of the needed improvements across the county.
Those are really good questions. How much do you take from protected lands to save money on the project long term? When you said this is a 20-year project, Frederic, we're 30 minutes.
Can I ask a question?
There's a lot of interest, so I'm going to let Meg and Nancy say something, and we'll just cut time from other people. Does that sound good to you?
Okay.
So, yeah, I just have one.
Here's my question. It's about traffic patterns. As a 30-year resident of the area, I have observed, but I wonder what your data shows, that the backup on Childs is mostly turning southbound on Stafford. I haven't noticed any backup from Stafford turning right onto Childs. So to the concept of removing the slip lane, I think you could, because the backup is really turning south on Stafford. So I just want to put that out there and ask if your data supports the same.
So from the capacity standpoint, it separates those who are going to go left and then those who just go right. It adds capacity in that it allows, it's only a 3-legged roundabout. So that presents some challenges, but it does allow merging better in the roundabout itself, and does a little bit to block traffic from going the other direction, you know, so others can actually use the roundabout.
Okay, well, I suggest that might be considered. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nancy. Meg, your turn.
Okay, sorry about that. So at some point they're going to put a parking lot at Stevens Meadow. Will there be an ability to put a driveway at the roundabout, or is that going to be too close to the roundabout to actually have turns in and turns out to that Stevens Meadow parking lot?
There won't be a parking lot.
At one point there's a project on there. It's just been deferred.
That's correct. It has been deferred, potentially indefinitely.
Okay. So in other words, canceled.
Yeah, and that's something that would be a request that would come from the city. So that's not really driven by the project itself. But that's a good question.
They did ask for just kind of a gravel entrance, so a maintenance vehicle could pull in. But it's so constrained there that would be a challenge.
All right, Randall, you're going to be our last question, and then we're going to move on. Thank you.
Okay, it seems like the parking lot is not allowed on Title X property. The access it seems like when you just look at the property, when you drive by, it seems like there could be some kind of a maintenance access farther down rather than so close to the turnaround. And that actually should be part of the proposal, but I haven't seen anything like that. And a couple of other things, the 4,500 square feet you're talking about used to be 16,000 square feet. And so that has apparently changed. So apparently now you're taking less than you initially wanted to. And also the other thing is that the way your roadway alignment comes into the existing roadway, and the way the existing roadway continues through the new part of the roadway that you're showing, that new part of the roadway in front of Stevens Meadows is exactly in the same location that the existing roadway is in. So why would you need to take property? That's just something that I'm wondering. And the other thing is that I've asked a couple of times about what kind of resolution do you have with Metro on the other property, on the property to the south of Stevens Meadows, the Pecan Creek Natural Area property. That must have similar restrictions. And in addition, the Stevens Meadows property actually has another restriction. It's called the conservation easement. So it seems to me that you're going to have to break through multiple, and also Metro provided the money for the Stevens Meadows property. So it seems to me in this process, you're going to have to break through multiple restrictions in order to accomplish this roundabout the way it's laid out. So those are the only things I had.
Thank you. There's a lot in there. I probably don't have enough time to address all of them. On the Metro side, we did kind of a pre-application with their staff, and they have looked at these concepts. We believe they're waiting for this to get resolved with the LO Parks before we formally submit the application. Let's see, on moving the driveway or the kind of the approach farther to the west, it's such a steep slope that would make just on Childs there, it would just make kind of a really challenging slope. And I can stop there.
You know, Randall, you had some great questions. Do you want to email those to us and we can send them to Joel so we can include them in our wrap-up notes to make sure they're all answered? Does that sound good?
Thank you.
All right, sorry, Frederic, back to you.
No, I love this interaction and great feedback. The presentation was amazing. Your responses, I thank you so much. This meeting's being recorded. We'll have it on our website. We'll put a link to it in our newsletter, and many more people that were not able to join today will be seeing it. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the treasurer's report. John T.
Hello. So our current balance in our Home Street bank account is $267.57. As noted last month, there have been multiple reimbursements made to cover the costs incurred for P&A social events. These are primarily for yard signs and the related equipment. The city of Lake Oswego had initial concerns about covering the costs for the laminator and related expenses because they were not specifically noted in the NEP grant award letter. But they did, however, get them approved and said they will add these to the items, to their pre-approved items for future NEP cycles. I've submitted the paperwork for reimbursement for $490.53. And once received, I'll deposit it into our Home Street account. And I'll also post all of the NEP grant paperwork for the 2023-2024 cycle to the Trello board. I've also received the reimbursement request form for the video conferencing subscription, which is expected to be automatically deducted later this month. Once I receive the payment receipt, I'll submit that paperwork for reimbursement. The NEP grant will cover up to $150 for this, and it must be submitted no later than July 5th. I believe the cost was, what, $158 or something for the annual Zoom account.
Something like that.
Something like that. So we're basically covered there. And finally, PNA residents are encouraged to donate to our neighborhood association. And for information about projected expenses and how to donate, refer to the Get Involved, I Want to Donate page on the Palisades neighborhood or website. Can you show that on the website?
Show what? I'm so sorry.
The Get Involved, I Want to Donate.
Yes.
On our website. We've got a new website now, so it's a little different.
Right. So the
Get Involved.
share, the donate is here and here.
Yeah.
And I've updated it to include what our expenses are, what we raise funds for, and our donors to date. And a big thank you to all who have done so. But since most people who are on this call, some have donated, but many are donating their time, which is very huge. It's very valuable. So I just want to make sure that you know that. So next on the list, I typically do latest news. I'm going to skip that. Our website's not quite ready for that yet. We are going to reorganize based on the community survey. We'll base our neighborhood news on what's been voted on as the most important. So please check on the results. It will be posted in our newsletter. Right now it's on the website. Does anybody have any questions about that? About the website, about latest news, about the survey? Okay. Next on the agenda, are there any new motions? No new motions. Before going to committee reports, I want to give Joe and Kiki Avila a big shout out. Our new website, as most of you know, is due to their amazing amount of time, design, dedication, understanding of the neighborhood, and it's so much better than the other website, and really appreciate it. First committee report is traffic and pathway. Rob Heath, would you like to get started on that?
Sure. I'll keep it fairly short, but I wanted to give a couple updates on four things. The first one is just again, I wanted to acknowledge that we heard about the Stafford improvement projects tonight, and so we'll continue following up on that. So, collect feedback as we heard from presentation. I think some of the items as we heard will collect questions. And then my suggestion here is, really try to take advantage of talk with the chair. And I think chair was urging us to try to take advantage of Trello to be very efficient and organized. So I'm just going to reinforce those. And so for any of the traffic issues, we can try to use Trello to the fullest to help us be efficient. The second thing is just to follow up. I mean, last time at our general meeting, we talked about continuing the work on the Lake Ridge parking concerns and traffic concerns around Lake Ridge High School. So I think the plan there is in the next 2 to 4 weeks, I'd like to call a special meeting to collect input, kind of come up with common list of all the concerns. And that was what was agreed to with the city management staff. And then we could start looking at those concerns. And the only word of caution there is, try to look at, listing all the concerns out instead of jumping to maybe what individuals may feel are potential solutions. There might be a lot of options on the table, and I think we just first want to get those concerns enumerated and understood by the staff, and then we can start working on them. So that's number 2 on the list, and something that's we're going to keep working on. Related to Lake Ridge, I just wanted to mention, we had a lot of discussion on LU 06-0069-1631. There was supposed to be from our Trello discussions, there's supposed to be potentially a May 7th 5 p.m. follow-up meeting, which was earlier this week. I reached out to Tony Vanderberg in the Lake Oswego School District, but I didn't hear anything on that. So I'm trying to follow up, and I got an outstanding question just to see where they're at. But again, those kind of neighborhood meetings will be kind of key to participate in. It just shows that it's not necessarily just one area of concern. There's several areas of concern. So it's kind of bounded by Treetop and Meadowlark, Ridge Point Drive. And then at the general meeting, I heard, concerns around the folks on the north side on Marjorie Drive, if I'm saying that right, or Marjorie Drive. It's kind of bounded going all the way around the school district. And so we're trying to work on that. And then just some feedback on the parking and the overall traffic is that I did receive some input from our general meeting that there was like a strong ask just to be very inclusive in our discussions. That there's a lot of folks. Again, I was mentioning that it's kind of bounded, around all the different corners of Lake Ridge High School. That it's bounded by Treetop and Meadowlark, Ridge Point, Marjorie. And so, some of the people were concerned that, they may get left out, and I try to convince them that will be heard. So I'm trying to connect with LOCD, Lake Oswego School District, and make sure that, we're getting the message out to everybody, because we do want it to be very inclusive. And then the other things on our list from a traffic point of view is Receipt Park, the C3 Church. So those are still works in progress. And then the last thing I had on my list was just kind of interesting. I didn't ask the questions tonight, but it looks like there's definitely some new traffic studies that are going on. And people in the neighborhood may have noticed that the pneumatic traffic sensors, counters, have been deployed all the way coming, down off of Gene Way. So like cut through, it looks like cut through traffic that's coming off of I-5 and would come out through Palisades and on to Stafford. So I'm trying to get more information on that, and then we can share.
Those are the annual measurement. They do it once a year in the spring.
These, so it's kind of interesting when you put the data together, or when you look at the placement of the sensors and they're looking at a certain direction. It seems like this is a little bit unique from the previous years, just by the way they're placed. And so I don't know if they might have annual type of measurements, but I think they may have the freedom to try to look at patterns. And so they're going into a certain pattern and trying to identify that. So that pattern that they appear to have selected for this year is quite interesting. So I'm going to see if we can't get maybe a little bit more information on what that is about, if there's anything to it. Yeah. And that was the update. So thank you.
I think you're muted, Frederic.
Sorry about that. Rob, thank you so much. You've done so much work on this, and we really appreciate it. Traffic and safety is such a big issue. And is there anybody who has any other questions for Rob? Okay. Next on the agenda is emergency preparedness. Rick Eilers was not able to make it today. He is traveling. So we're going to have Roger Gray speak about power outages and safety in our neighborhood, responses from the city manager, PGE, Oregon Public Utilities Commission, And as most of you know, Roger crafted an amazing letter, and we sent it all out to the board to review before we passed it on to city council, mayor, city manager, PGE, and Oregon Public Utilities Commission. And Roger has done quite a bit of follow-up on that. Take it away, Roger.
All right. Thank you, Frederic. I know we're overdue, so I'll be quick. The letter went to the Oregon Public Utilities Commission, the city manager, and PGE. Bottom line so far is that Portland General has responded. The city manager, Ms. Bennett, is doing a great job. She considers this a citywide issue, which it is. It's not just a Palisades neighborhood that suffered. So I'm really encouraged so far. The Oregon Public Utilities Commission responded. I talked to them today. They're looking to the city to be the lead, which I think is appropriate for now. And the bottom line is that they're focusing on improving both reliability and communication, which is appropriate. It's bad enough to have an outage, but having outage communication is critical. It's been escalated to two people I know personally, the CEO of PGE and the senior vice president that's responsible for the distribution and transmission system. So it's got a lot of attention. I'm pleased with that. The one thing I want to emphasize, and I reiterated this to Portland General, the Oregon Public Utilities Commission, and Ms. Bennett of the city, is that this isn't just a winter issue. I actually am more concerned about falling lines in a summer time in what's called a red flag warning, meaning high wind, high temperature, low humidity, because not only do we get outages, we get fires. And I've told them to pay attention to that issue. It really hasn't caught on yet in terms of the Northwest, but we're going to be subject to the same kinds of risks that we saw in California and then last year tragically in Lahaina. So we've got to keep on focusing on both. I'll keep on reporting out, and Frederic, I would suggest that I'll send it to the board, the communication summary between myself and Ms. Bennett. But if as appropriate, we can post it on the website as well. That's my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, the chair, maybe just one comment. So thanks for all your work there, Roger. I was going to maybe raise one point. I listened at the general meeting, and I'm not sure, you're probably already looking at this, but one of the suggestions I would have is look at better isolation and more of a mesh network. It seems like, if a tree went down on South Shore Drive, it took out thousands of people, and it took it out, all the way to the south. And if that could have been isolated more, where it's like, a group of 100 people that are affected, or 50 or small, and it doesn't take out, half the city. It seems like they don't have, very good switches or isolation on it. And so that to me seems like a lower hanging fruit than, maybe putting all the wires underground and doing things like that. It's just adding a little bit better isolation.
Yeah, exactly. We raised that in the letter. It's kind of a technical part of an exhibit we added to the letter. I'm going to follow up with Portland General's technical staff that I know as well, because we should not have one tree take out 1,600 customers for 3 and 5 days. There's better segmentation, mesh networks. I'd say that's more of a network telecom thing. On the electric side, it's called segmentation. There are mesh networks on the electric side too, but it's not. It's usually used in highly urban, like New York City and San Francisco and places like that. Well, we need a segmentation is what's called, and they just haven't segmented our. So what happens is one tree takes out 1,600 customers, and it's just it's not an acceptable design. And I think that people recognize that.
Thank you, Roger. I know the LO Review also had a news blurb today with PGE saying what they're going to be doing to improve. So I know it was probably influenced by your letter. So thank you. Frederic, back to you.
Thank you. So are there any other questions, including those in our neighbors? I noticed that Sean and Betsy, please feel free to raise your hand or ask a question for this or any other topic. And if you're not subscribed to the Palisades Neighborhood Association newsletter for future news, updates on all of these topics, please go to our website, palisadesneighborhoodassociation.org, and subscribe. Okay, land use, Chris Durkee.
Hi, a lot going on in the land use world. The big one, of course, is the Stafford project at the C3 church site. The first mandatory formal neighborhood meeting as part of the developer's land use application is Monday night, May 20th. I believe postcards have gone out or will go out. It's at 7 o'clock at the C3 Church. And he's considering alternate schemes that don't involve the 4-story condo Stafford on structure, either on Stafford, either relocated to other parts of the site or eliminated entirely. So there's a lot going on. The design is still getting solidified. So it's a good time to be offering input and suggestions. So I would encourage all who are interested to attend that meeting, and that's on the website there. Meg and I attended the pre-app meeting for this project on April 18th. And the summary of that pre-app, the notes that I prepared are on the P&A website if anybody's interested. The key issues in the pre-app are that the current design, which has the 4-story condo structure on Stafford, is that 4-story condo project requires a rezone of that part of the site from R15 to R0, which would increase density and height. Requires a subdivision of the R15 lots for middle housing, that's townhomes and cottage clusters for most of the rest of the site. A CUP for the preschool and cafe. And a bit of really good news, I thought, is that, and we asked this question directly of the planner, there's no city requirement for a vehicular connection to Ridge Point Drive. I know that was a really hot issue, a concern of the Atherton and Bellaterra HOA and all the neighbors to the west. So that was good news. Meg and I shared the neighborhood concerns regarding traffic impact, density, and the massing of the 4-story condos on Stafford. The developer will have to prepare a traffic impact report that will include the added traffic from Rasique and Lorac and the golf course. Last item, Meg and I attended a pre-app for a historic home on Cherry Crest Drive for the rebuilding of a collapsing porte cochere. The Historic Resources Advisory Board folks were there. They support the design proposed for the reconstruction, and so we concurred and supported that, their opinion. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Chris. Are there any questions, comments, concerns about anything that Chris has just said?
Just a quick one. I didn't hear what's being reconstructed on Cherry Crest.
It's a historic home. It's if you look at the aerial map of along Cherry Crest, it's a huge lot with a big drive-in circular drive. On the north side of the house, there's a porte cochere that's about it's about 10 feet.
Oh, I've seen that. Okay, thank you.
By about 15 feet long, and it's basically collapsing. The wood is just rotting and it's collapsing.
Thank
so
you.
they need to rebuild it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Am I muted? No, I'm not. Okay. Again, any other comments, questions, concerns?
Well, Chris, I was just going to say on the rezoning application when they do it, I know we've tried to like be very proactive and get in front of everything. So, you know, thanks for all your efforts in doing that. The one ask as far as like continue that kind of proactive type of position is when they do the rezone application, as soon as we could, the earliest possible that we could get the applicable code and criteria that will be used for the rezone application. You know, having gone through other rezoning type of applications, that's commonly a complaint is that people don't have enough time to look at it. And so it just moves too fast. So if there's any preliminary information, you know, this is the development code that will be applied and evaluated in considering the rezone application, and then the criteria and the policies that they apply. And even if there's anything preliminary, as soon as we get that, if we could pass that out, I think people would really appreciate that.
Okay, good. I think that's a great suggestion. For what it's worth, I have been pushing Ken, the developer, to either eliminate the 4-story condo structure or move it to the west. Now, moving it to the west would still require a rezone, but at least it would remove that massing from Stafford. But even better would be the elimination of it entirely, which would eliminate the rezone. And my last discussion with Ken was that he's seriously considering not going through the rezone and eliminating the 4-story condo structure and just developing the whole site with middle housing. So that remains to be seen what direction they're going, but we may have more definition on that at the meeting on the 20th.
That's very interesting. So please share more information if it is indeed that going that way. So what I understood you say is that it'll continue to be zoned R15, but then the middle housing will be able to be applied to it. So that's kind of an interesting perspective. So yeah, please share any information you can.
Yep.
So Chris, when you say the whole thing could be middle housing, so the whole thing could be 3 or 4 stories?
No, middle housing would be either cottage clusters or townhomes, and the cottage clusters are typically 2 stories. The townhomes could possibly be 3 stories, but they could just as easily likely be just 2 stories. So these are all issues that he's grappling with right now in terms of what the impact to the overall project would be on the financial side, and what the what the risk side is in terms of having to go through a 6-month rezone process, which may end up being denied in the end.
Thank you so much. Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's move on to Nancy Sage and Parks.
Thank you. Trying to get my audio set up here. So Ian Anderholm held a meeting on the 1st of May, and Chris was the P&A attendee, and he shared some notes from that regarding plans by Parks and Rec. The state grant application for park funding on Receipt Park, the picnic facility and the playground is under review by the Oregon Parks and Rec Department. There's going to be an opportunity for a live presentation to justify the approval of that grant, and they will likely ask someone from P&A to join in that effort to persuade them to say, yes, you can have the grant money. So that's coming. The city has already purchased a climbing tower for the play field with funding from their first grant. And the skate park will be done presumably by the end of June. I don't have an updated date, but I've asked for one, and that's when it'll open. And then regarding the phase 3 athletic field at Receipt, it is now a question mark. They're doing another survey. They do these periodically in Parks and Rec to discover how many fields are needed to support community needs. And because of the sharing agreement with the school district, in fact, they may not need that field. So that's a question mark at this point. More news coming in the future. And then the Lesher Farm Plan that's documented did have a field kind of in the back behind Azalea, and that one will be omitted from the plans being updated with the county. So that field they had thought they might need, they now know they don't, and it's not practical where it would be positioned anyway. So there's a lot of reasons for that to come off the table. That's it. Any questions?
One question is, you mentioned that they're questioning whether they need the field. If they don't need the field, I'm sure this is a kind of large soccer field and baseball field. What would they do with the land? How they'll look at some other use, or do they have ideas already?
Don't know that. Chris, do you have any additional information?
Yeah, Ivan and I kind of knocked around some ideas, and I suggested, why don't you leave it just the way it is and let families that go to the playground have the kids have a fun time running around and rolling down the hill and everything else. And he said they might put a loop pathway, gravel pathway around the perimeter of the park. And I think Nancy, you had a great suggestion, have kind of contemplative spots along the west edge of that,
Yeah, Pecan Creek.
right
Uh,
up
Pec-
along along the creek. So with benches maybe, so families could sit and chat and just listen to the birds and that kind of thing. So to me, the best of all worlds would be if that playfield does not go ahead and the playground, the play athletic field does not go ahead, and they basically leave it the way it is. I think the circular path is a great idea. That would be a win-win-win all the way around.
Yeah, and I like the idea of, keeping Pecan Creek as natural as possible and letting folks stroll by. Ian mentioned that the grasses near Pecan Creek have nesting birds right now. And that's a case in point for why we should, leave that alone and maybe just have benches a little further off so people can sit and observe what's going on over there with the wildlife. But TBD, I guess there's no answer yet.
He did,
RJ?
he did say that there would be another public survey and public input before they would proceed with the sports field. So that's
Okay.
good news. There'll be another bite at the apple.
That's
Right.
great. And we can include that in our newsletter. We're over time by 3 minutes now, but RJ Cook, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just very quickly, great work tonight. Appreciate all the stuff you're doing, being your neighbor to the south here. And just want to let you know, next Tuesday night, Stafford Hamlet will have their meeting, and Ivan will actually be there talking to us about the same thing about area parks and recs thing. So I just wanted to get that out there. So if you have,
Good.
feel free to join our meeting and ask those questions at that time.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to invite Joe Avila to speak about our project management software. And do you want to share a screen, or are you just going to speak, Joe?
Nothing to share. I'm just going to speak and keep it to about 2 minutes. So just an update for the team here. Kira and I met earlier this week to kind of finalize an ongoing conversation we've been having about what to do about this great tool, Trello, that has decided to kind of make it difficult for organizations like us to afford the tool. And so we definitely know, after using Trello over the past year, what a valuable tool it has become for us. So it is important to maintain the level of efficiency to come up with another tool. And Basecamp is a tool that we feel very strongly would satisfy those requirements for the organization based on its ease of use, number one, and the fact that we need something to continue this momentum that we've gained over the past year. So things to think about is, of course, cost. Unlike Trello, which basically wants to charge you $10 for every single user per month, what we can do with Basecamp is just get a single user license, and designate project managers to share that account. Okay. And they would only be logging in specifically to set up the projects. And then that would be it. They wouldn't actually use it for the day-to-day correspondence. They would log in as a collaborator, if you will, so that we have visibility on who's saying what. For historical purposes, the Trello boards can actually be exported to single file HTML, which is a fancy word for you can open it in your web browser off of your laptop, and you can view and search for anything that had been talked about in Trello in the past. So we do have that point of reference we can go back to. Any active boards on Trello, unfortunately, for cost reasons, we would migrate those manually. And by migrate, we mean create new ones, and we just resume from there. There are third-party companies that will do this for a fee, but we don't need to go down that path. So our recommendation to the board, again, it's Carrie and my recommendation is to proceed with a base camp license at $15 a month. Hopefully we'll get a donation to help cover that cost. So we know what the cost is going to be for the year. It's in line with what we pay for the Zoom services. So that's it for me. Thank you.
John?
It's a question for those of us that were getting ready to post something on Trello. Should we hold off for the next month?
Well, actually, we have 10 days left. So
Yeah, we don't have that many days left.
yeah.
So
I mean, I don't know how to answer that, John. It's a great question. And I'm even myself, I'm like, we can't just stop what we're doing, right? So I think you can, I think it's safe to continue to post, and then we'll designate a cutoff day about 2 days prior, and then we'll freeze everything, take the snapshot for historical purposes and make it available to the team to reference. And then we will be setting up roughly the same structure over on Basecamp. Chris had a question about, is the subscription cost reimbursable by the city?
I can
Probably a
answer.
question for you, John.
John and I have talked about this, and my intention is to make a request for it.
Yeah.
The worst
I know
that can
there's a
happen-
long-term. I know there's a long-term plan for the city to allow neighborhoods to join the Microsoft Teams underneath the city's license, but that's like 2 years out. So we can't wait for 2 years. Teams is a great option. It's just not applicable at this moment in time. So I think this will suffice for us for the time being.
Yeah, and it's really not as user-friendly, is my understanding, as Basecamp and Trello.
Correct. Yeah. Teams is really for big corporate organizations. I use it for my regular job, so I wouldn't recommend it for our group of volunteers.
Okay.
John,
Thank
your
you.
hand is raised.
No, and Basecamp allows us to download files as well. And comments.
A lot of the same capabilities you're used to with Trello, you'll be able to do the same thing. So you can add files into discussions for other folks to view.
Okay,
that's correct.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Any other questions?
Do we have to have a motion to approve this expenditure, or can we do that offline through email?
Why don't we just do it real quick right now? Anybody have an objection to this? To the $15 a month, it's what, 180 a year? Is that right?
Yeah. I'll make the formal motion for expenditure of $180 a year for Basecamp project management tool.
Anybody want a second?
Roger, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And
Aye.
anybody objecting? Oh, John, yes, you were just saying aye. And does anybody object? Okay, the motion passes. And unless there's any more discussion, let's move it on to the last item. Our public seems to have left, so it's just the board members and committee coordinators. So Jenny, did you want to say a few words about Palisades International School and what's happening there?
Sure. I'll just be really brief. May 20th is a big day for us. That's when the Lake Oswego Long-Term Planning Facilities Committee goes to the Lake Oswego School Board and gives a recommendation of what the next bonding phase should look like. Right now, it appears they want to rebuild from the bottom up Forest Hills, and the big debate is Lake Grove. What should happen there? Do they rebuild Lake Grove? Do they rebuild Lake Grove with like a civic center and library and different things? And that's still up for debate. 13 years ago, I'll just be super brief, they closed Uplands Elementary and Palisades. 3 years ago, they reopened Palisades to put the Palisades World Language School there, and we offer and give kids the opportunity to learn Spanish and Mandarin. So from kindergarten to 3rd grade, 90% of your day is taught in the foreign language. And that's where we were housed and moved to. We started the Palisades immersion program, started at Lake Grove, was kicked out, moved to River Grove. Then when River Grove, we were moved into little, what are those called? Little white buildings. Little
Temporary
RVs.
structures.
Yes, and then now we're at Palisades. So the Palisades community would like to stay where we are. We only need, it just looks like 6 more classrooms. And the debate is, do you move Palisades over to Uplands? Uplands is the same quality, 1960s building, no new STEM lab, no new library, nothing new. Or do you just keep us where we are? And they've kind of pitted Palisades against Lake Grove, like either one school will move or the other. And we're both saying, let's all stay where we are and just invest in the schools that we have. So that's it. May 20th, it will start the public debate and the kind of the open forum for people to contribute and discuss what they think is best. So that's it. And if you'd like to learn more, you're welcome to come to the meeting on May 20th.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any comments or questions? I think it would be unfortunate to lose such a gem of a school in our neighborhood. Are there?
Frederica, is it too soon for P&A board to have an opinion on whether the school should stay there at Palisades Elementary? Or should we wait till after the 20th?
That's
It's not too late to write something, but I think let's see what they finally propose. It's been kind of hush hush, and then we can also, if we feel like we can speak out, we can.
So you don't think we should get in on early days?
I mean, if anybody wants, we could write a letter and put it into the public testimony, like submit it. So I'm happy to write it if people feel like they support keeping our local elementary school here, if that's what people would like to do. But I don't want to put any pressure on anyone until kind of we learn a little more. Yep, John?
Just a quick question, not related to this, but about P&A secretary. Is that position being eliminated? I know that we've been.
Oh, John, when you didn't come to the last meeting, we also added that onto your job. Is that okay? We're totally we're just joking. We're gonna do.
But I only got it for a month. I
secretary.
just got it for a month, so I'm just trying to figure out what this is all about.
Here's what we decided, John, and that is through Rob Heap's suggestion. I think it's the city that started this or is doing this. Our recordings, our Zoom recordings will be posted, a link will be posted on the website. Those will be our meeting minutes, except that the approval of meeting minutes and the roll call and any action items or motions that were passed are those 3 things are recorded, and everybody has been assigned a different month. It's rotating within the board members.
So we're eliminating that position?
No, just we're happy to have somebody step in. Would you like to step in?
No, I'm kind of busy as treasurer, as you might know.
All right. Well, until
I'm
we
just
have
curious.
until we have a secretary, it's become a much smaller ask, and we're rotating.
Okay.
Yes, Chris.
Oh, just one last thing. The Palisades Neighborhood FRS radio network seems to be really dying, unfortunately. There was a net last, whatever it was, end of last month, and there were very, very few people on it. In fact, so few people that they've eliminated the east and west half of Palisades being on 2 different frequencies so that people could communicate better, and reverted back to 1 frequency, which means no one on the east can hear people on the west, and people on the west can't hear people on the east. So I would encourage folks, if you have a radio, let's keep this thing alive and not let it die a slow death.
We would
Thank
do
you
it on a
for-
Monday night at 8 o'clock versus like, the Sunday at the end of the month. That's only, literally, I've never been able to attend one.
I
Oh,
agree with
That's
Jenny.
the
I think
only thing with the conflict. I'm so
it's-
sorry, like,
it's
and I'm happy
Sunday
to pass
dinner.
my radio to somebody.
Yeah, it's Sunday dinner. I don't have a radio anymore, but Sunday dinner is the wrong time for our family. I
Okay.
think a
Chris,
weeknight
I
would
was
look
going to second
better.
that too. That was kind of my comments back to Mark Thornburg and others. So I think what we're hearing tonight is very consistent. Just Sunday nights are kind of a very challenging time.
Yeah.
Okay.
uh,
So-
uh,
And I question whether it's needed monthly. I think you could do it every other month or something less frequent. I think you might get more participation.
Well, then maybe what we should do is if each person on the line here, each board member and team leader could maybe send a note to Mark with their vote on first, second, and third preference for date, for day of the month and time of day. And hopefully there'll be a consensus and he can pick a time and day that would work better for folks.
We could do it right after this meeting if only we ended on time, right?
Oh, okay, well, nobody needs to stay any longer. I have one other issue, and that is that you know what? This can wait. All right. Let's just end the meeting unless somebody has something burning to share. Okay, so thank you, everybody, for participating. And anybody who can stay on another minute, please do so. So,
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you for
everyone.
leading us.
okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
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 So the thing that I wanted to run by whoever wants to stay, give me some feedback is events in the in the what's it called, in the survey. A couple people wrote, how about micro events? So that got me thinking, like block parties and such, and that got me thinking about because it's been so hard to do an event for the whole Palisades neighborhood of 1,700 homes, 4,000 people. I think people do want to spend more time with people that they see every day, or not every day, but more often, so their immediate neighborhood. And so I'm thinking that one idea might be to have maybe each P&A area or combined couple of areas have like a so-called block party, and that the Palisades Neighborhood Association event fund that we get from the city could be divided into, I don't know, 3 or 4 pots, maybe, not knowing how many people.
Isn't
would
there
be-
already an event called National Night Out that is paid for by the city for neighborhoods to get together?
It's not paid for by the city.
Oh, it's not?
No, they advertise it for you, but
Oh.
they don't give you anything. They will,
Ah,
if you
okay.
request it, they will stop by and give you like a cookie or a couple cookies,
Okay.
but that's
Okay.
about all that they do.
Uh-huh.
But I think by having, I kind of wanted to bring it up now because it's summertime and this is the time to have events, and we don't have to mess with a venue so much if it's just, a block.
Uh-huh.
And but so the money would have to come out of the events funds, but it could be a much smaller ask in
Mhm.
terms of, anyways, what does everybody think about that?
Sounds
Chris
good.
says-
It's an interesting concept for sure.
Yeah, I
Probably
don't
a
know
lot
if we
more
can afford
manageable.
it.
What are you
But I
talking
just don't-
about, Nancy? Why wouldn't we be able to afford it?
Well, how is it funded?
Well, you can have a combination of some of the, people, you can get some free music from local bands who are interested. They've already committed to me, a couple different bands. You could get food partly from the P&A funds, and partly people bring stuff.
Okay.
So it's kind of a combination of old fashioned and new. Mostly I want to empower neighbors to get to know each other better and to be more cohesive. But I think it's a more relevant ask when it's in a smaller section, a smaller amount of people. Yeah, so the logistics wouldn't have to be as complicated. And so, you know, of course, we would go to all of the board members to see if that is a good direction and what most people want to pursue. And then we would put it out maybe in a newsletter and on the website saying, hey, if you want to do this, these funds are allowed, and a certain number of funds are included, and the first 3 neighborhoods or 4 neighborhoods who have a leader who wants to organize it, you know, we will help support them. Let's see, Chris Durkee, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think funding should be a roadblock. I mean, we've had neighborhood potlucks in our neighborhood, you know, like at Ray's backyard and so on, that have been extremely well attended, a lot of fun, and everyone, it was a potluck. Everybody brought what they needed to eat and drink. To me, there was no cost was never even an issue, and we had a great time. So I think the concept is perfect. It should be on a neighborhood area by neighborhood area, and I don't even know if it needs to be a board motion other than the recommendation that each board member try to set up some kind of an event, potluck or something for their area, and put out flyers or emails or something. Walk door to door. Most areas are not that big that's a problem.
Well, one thing we can do if it is a PNA sanctioned thing is we can use the subscriber list to get the message out, in addition to maybe some signs or, you know, a little help from the PNA. But, you know, the actual expenditures, yeah, Nancy, we wouldn't necessarily be, you know, people shouldn't bank on that.
Okay.
But I don't know how I feel. I mean, I'd like to hear from everybody here who is a board member about, I hate to put one more thing on the board members. Some people are up for doing that. Most people aren't. And, you know, so putting it out in a newsletter, or, you know, if one of the board members, if you know somebody in your neighborhood who would be interested, that's great. But I don't want it to be another responsibility for the board member if that's not their wheelhouse. I'd love to hear from the board members what they feel. I don't want to speak for you. Yes,
how often are we thinking about doing this? So just in summer, obviously. So
well, it could be to start out with maybe once a year, but I don't know. What are you thinking? Actually, it could be as often as a neighborhood wanted to. You know, the only barrier is you know, getting a volunteer to organize it, and then the PNA can certainly do advertising and use our resources to support it. Does that answer your question, Chuck?
Yep. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, like Chris said, our neighborhood has regular block parties, but we could, you know, we could extend it to a larger situation and have it literally in the block. Yeah. And then, you know, we get the city involved so that, you know, we put roadblocks and, you know, just have like a formula, and the PNA can help with that. You know, just connecting the city, getting it done, making it more accessible. And neighborhoods who don't want to do it don't need to, or don't have somebody. So the only thing with the funds is that we would, you know, minus a little bit that we would need for general meetings. We would just need to see, you know, my question is, when you start a program, not enough people know about it. So I expect the first year or two might be not very many people are asking, and then it might grow from there. So that's the only thing in terms of the financial piece that I'm not sure how to deal with that in terms of events. Nancy, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I'm
Okay.
still chewing on it. It sounds like a lot of work.
But work on whose part? The event
coordinator of the neighborhood. So whoever
But
does that.
if it shouldn't be a lot of work. We can, figure out a formula for them. But it still needs to be somebody who wants, that neighborhood would need to have some kind of leader to do it.
Yeah.
For sure. But, the advertising of it does not need to be a lot of work
Okay.
on the PNA's part. I've set up the subscription so that it's divided by PNA area, so we can target specific areas. And then whoever's putting it on can invite, people that they know on their block, or, put flyers out or whatever. Okay, well, thank you for everybody's input. I appreciate it. And unless there's anything else, I think we can sign off.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye-bye.